So Emma is double booked tonight, doing a tasting at the Elysium. So we have the wonderful David Ligoff hosting tonight, but he's been, yeah, as I mentioned in the email, doing a lot of work with GlenAllachie for the last 10, 15 years. So yeah, we're in good hands tonight. Looking forward to sharing some of those stories, David.
Yes, I know it's scraping the bottom of the barrel, and everybody prefers Emma, but be it as it may, sure we'll have lots of fun. And as usual with the whiskey list tastings of this nature, there's the weird, the wonderful, and the one-offs, and we certainly got that with GlenAllachie. There's talking about one-offs. There's only a few of them are available for purchase. Afterwards, we'll put the link in with the discount code, and I hope you've all got a decent chunk of water. Some of them are over 60%. Some of them, even though they're low ABVs, do need a dash of water. Obviously, it required a lot of diligent research. That's why there's only some one-offs, because some of them have been severely depleted over time. Because it's such a small group, happy for you to unmute yourselves and for us to have a general chat as we go through all the whiskies. We'll do the usual poll at the end and get some feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you want more of. Obviously, if people want to watch this afterwards, it's always on the Whiskey List YouTube channel. We should wait 2 more minutes and see if anybody else joins and leap straight in. You've got in the chat the tasting order. You can get all your little bottles lined up or pre-poured.
Good to see all the regulars: John, Scott, Howard, David, Michael, Stephen, Chris, Charlie, Jake, and Wisdom.
Anybody, just as a matter of interest, might be a silly question, but don't want to make any assumptions, who really hasn't tried any of the GlenAllachie range before?
I think we're all seasoned in some regard.
And anybody who's only tried just the core range, the general releases, the 12, 15, 18? Okay, Michael, okay, good. We're in for a bit of a treat.
All right, I think you might be good to go, David.
Excellent. So while we're busy just talking a bit about background about GlenAllachie, we'll start off with the 7-year-old Hungarian oak cask. And slap some of that in your glass. Now, 48%, and we'll talk more about Billy Walker, but his skill really is more than the just as a distiller. Billy Walker's strength is in cask management, and this is a fantastic example why we're starting out with this one of using interesting oak. I believe it's one of the few, if not the only, whiskies that have spent time in this virgin Hungarian Quercus petraea oak. It spends 18 months in the virgin oak casks, and on the nose, you're just getting to me, it's like chocolate coated Werther's Originals. Got that butterscotch plus some chocolate. So give it a nose, just work it around a bit. Now, GlenAllachie as a distillery is relatively modern. It was only built in 1967, pretty much after single malts were popularized worldwide, about 4 or 5 years after that. But it was built as a feeder for the McKinley's blends. Now, McKinley's, well, again, has a long history. That was the stuff that they dug up in Antarctica from 120 years ago. But in 1985, the distillery was mothballed. In 1989, Campbell's, which then became part of Pernod Ricard, reopened it, but it only released its first single malt in 2005. So it reopened again in 1989 and pretty much has been operating uninterrupted since then. When Billy Walker sold the Benriach Distillery Company with Glenglassaugh, Benriach, and Glendronach, he and Tricia Savage and Graham Stevenson got together and bought the distillery of Pernod Ricard in 2017. Now, they inherited 16 warehouses with 50,000 casks to play around with. And really all of these that we're tasting tonight are from the Billy Walker era. So any thoughts on the nose so far? At 48%. So we're starting off quite gentle before we ramp it up pretty quickly. Got an interesting floral note on the palate. And a real mocha finish. It's at 48%, 7 years old. It's the finish is surprisingly long. In terms of the spirit, GlenAllachie have what I would consider very long, a long fermentation time, 160 hours. It's almost a week. Probably double that what most of them use. So the longer the fermentation, you're getting a sweeter spirit, especially in the Speyside area.
David, was that the original sort of fermentation time / recipe and everything before the Billy Walker purchased it, or is this what he's brought in now to kind of establish his flavor profile?
That seems to be what it was, but I suspect that there was no reason to change it. Knowing Billy's style, and Ben Riach as well, has got that sweeter spirit style, where that comes through in all of their releases, and it certainly works for a Speyside whiskey to have a longer fermentation. Yes, it's that heather notes. It's that it's almost heather or lavender. I've never rolled around in fields of heather in Scotland, so my nose kind of translates that into more lavenderish.
We'll send you next year, David, for that mission.
I was there just over a year ago, and but it was with my family, and they refused to let me roll around in the fields. So.
David, is it only just the virgin oak? That's it? Or is it
no, it's ex-bourbon, and then 18 months.
In the
5.5 years, and then 18 months in the virgin oak. It's a brave distillery that has it 100% in virgin oak. Sorry, Howard?
That bourbon, that strong bourbon, and then that unusual secondary layer coming through. So that's where it's coming from. Okay,
that's right. Yeah. Now a lot of the reviews and the whiskey-based guys say even at 48%, a drop of water does help. Adds a touch of spiciness on the nose, almost enhances the alcohol effect.
For a moment there, David, I thought you were going to do the old that video on YouTube with the nose, the swirling, the throwing, the spinning.
No. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
We wouldn't do that with GlenAllachie.
No. Now it's interesting that even though the distillery, when it was built, it had a 3 or 4 million liter capacity, and shortly after it was built, they doubled the number of stalls. It's got a 4 million liter capacity, but Billy Walker's only running it at 800,000 liters a year. So it's cut back production. Probably because he doesn't need to. With 50,000 casks, that's a lot of wood to work with. So he's got that kind of tinkling around in the back of his brain that he doesn't want to. He wants to manage the stocks plus add a few new ones. If you look at the distilleries that Billy's been involved in, and it's no accident that you'll see these names popping up a lot in the Whiskey List portfolio. Now he started out on the island of Mull with Tobermory under Burn Stewart, and Stuart Buchanan, who is was still now the Brown-Forman brand ambassador. He stayed there, but he followed Billy from there to Ben Riach, Glendronach, and Glenglasser, and all those rich meaty styles. And you can see it coming in on really those old Tobermory Lachig releases. If you've had the pleasure of having those old, like the old 18-year-old sherry cask Lachig, if you can still get hold of them in the wooden boxes, they're absolutely fantastic. And that's Billy's signature style, Glendronach. And so there's no accident, I suppose, that people look at GlenAllachie and they say, well, now, is this the new benchmark in sherry cask whiskies? Is Billy taking his Glendronach skills and translating them to the new distillery? Well, we've got a few of that style this evening, so you can make up your own mind. So, any thoughts on this one? Is it interesting? Is it interesting nice? Interesting okay? Interesting bad? Or just weird? I'm just on mute, Howard.
It's certainly not my favourite style of what they do. Some of the ones we get into later are really in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, it has, for me. It's got an interesting finish. It's a kind of a woody finish, even at 7 years old.
I think the nose is the better part of the whiskey.
Yes, yeah, no, exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm. Take look, Ollie and I didn't make any of these ourselves. So please be honest. We don't take it personally.
It's not bad. I think just as GlenAllachie goes, they have better.
Yes, that's a. But the thing is, you look at these things and they pop up every now and again. Or you find them while visiting the distilleries or the UK, and you look at it and you think, that's intriguing. I wonder what it's like, and that's the start of the rabbit hole.
Yeah, but GlenAllachie, for some reason, make an extraordinarily large amount of unusual barrels. Literally, all you see is just different barrels coming out with different, obviously, their style or their inheritance.
It's a bit of both, and again, you look at the distillery was built as a feeder for the blends, as was Benriach. Now, with Benriach, Billy inherited also about 24,000 casks, and before they all ran out, there were also really interesting ones. The most amazing things, some peated ones, peated wine cask finishes and sherry casks, and because the blenders want that uniqueness for their blends. And this is what's happening at GlenAllachie as well. And something a bit more traditional, we'll leap into number 2, which is the 11-year-old Marsala finish. It's a UK exclusive. So sadly, we don't have any of this one. Also at 48%. The Marsala also not an uncommon type of wine cask to finish whiskies in. So this spent 8 years in ex-bourbon casks, and the rest of the time, 42 months in Marsala casks. And this is really comes from the style of wine that comes from Sicily. Not as sweet as I would have expected, actually. Quite nutty. Anybody picking up any aniseed, licorice? I'm getting that on the finish.
Quite peppery, almost like a bit of a rye.
Yep, there's definitely that spiciness. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, quite similar to the first one on the nose, I'm still getting that butterscotch. And that's probably the characteristic of the bourbon cask maturation. Because that's the common base between the first two.
Do you know why the ABV is 48 for these two when I believe the rest of the core range, the 12, the 15s, 46?
That's the only thing I can think of, is that with these finishes, that you need that slightly higher ABV just to push through that finishing cask characteristic.
I don't know, all the single casks are all over the shop, which makes sense. But yeah, it's interesting that they got 46 and 48. So it feels like there's decisions being made there. It's but the consistency, I can't work out why.
Yeah, there's there was a trend a few years ago with younger whiskies, specifically Glenglasser, Kilchoman, that they were all at 50%. And there was a trend, and obviously that it's different companies, different distilleries, that they realized that was a sweet spot for specifically younger whiskies. And Scottish whiskies can produce good quality younger whiskies if they have a narrow cut, and that's what those guys have been doing. And that's a Jim Swan characteristic that he built into distilleries that he worked with and got copied by a few others. So that's probably either trial and error. They all came to the same conclusion, or they all copied somebody else who was doing it first. Haven't tried this with a bit of water yet. Won't add much. It doesn't feel like it needs much. No, I know you're waiting for me to fling it. I'm not going to.
So, a few tasting notes. Michael's saying sweet caramel, wisdom, toffee. Michael's saying getting macadamia
nuts, yep,
on the palate and towards the finish. So
yeah, that nuttiness is there.
we were oversubscribed with this tasting. So I don't actually have a kit tonight. Unfortunately, people were begging us for. We always try and hold one or two back for the team with obviously hosting and tasting. But yeah, my kit got relegated. So someone's enjoying it tonight.
It's taking one for the team.
I'll live vicariously through all your tasting notes.
I think I am, because Emma must have one.
Yeah, maybe she sent one to herself and forgot she's not hosting tonight.
Forgot, yes. Yes. Well, that's compared with the first one, thumbs up, thumbs down, better, same. Okay, yeah, interesting.
Probably preference of this
You're not
one.
allowed to vote, Ollie. You can't just copy everybody else.
I'm loving the Baxter Inn style of shelving behind you.
Yes,
Yeah, that was exactly what it was modelled off.
I
think
saw
I missed
it.
it was the angled ladder.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, got to see you climb the ladder.
Yeah, I'm 6'5". I can reach the top shelf without it, but I am going to put the ladder in just for looks.
Okay. Right. Ramping it up ever so slightly in style and ABV. Next one is the single PX Hogshead. %, 58.7, 2004. So this was an exclusive for Whisky and Element in Melbourne. Only 334 bottles.
Was this one of yours?
No.
I know we often pillage your collection behind you when we have a gap in the collection.
No, there's just one here that was liberated. I think it's the one after this. But this one, it's interesting that the sherry cask, you get the sherry butts, which are the big 500 liters, but this is a hogshead, which is a 250 liter reworked from old bourbon casks. They remake them, and that's the size between a normal standard American standard barrel, 200 liters, and a hogshead. Physically isn't that much, but they can get a good 20% more liquid in. So they do kind of save space in the warehouses, and just matures that slightly slower. So that PX, you do get that typical liquid raisin character on the nose.
So
It's got such a creamy mouthfeel to it.
Sorry, you say it carries the high alcohol so well. I wouldn't have picked that at 58 on tasting.
No, not at all. And somebody one day has to explain the chemistry to me, because I don't understand it. But there's definitely, you get less of a perceived alcohol effect with a 100% sherry or port cask than with a bourbon cask.
The sweetness.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
It's the sweetness. The sweetness overshadows the dryness. The drier the alcohol to your taste buds, more the alcohol flavor comes through.
Yep. Great. Now I know. No.
Same
That's why I'm here, to learn things.
If you take a very sweet liqueur, you can have some very sweet liqueurs. You don't taste the alcohol. But if you have a very dry liqueur, you'll taste the alcohol.
Well, to be fair, those of us who drink a lot of cask strength whiskies don't taste the alcohol in any liqueurs.
Yeah. It's also true. If you kind of mix it in, you'll taste. You can play with it and taste it. Taste the old Slimovitz. Remember the old Slimovitz?
Yes, of course. I've got some here, of course. Yes. Those of you who are old enough to remember Joel Mervis of the Passing Show, with Josip Broz and Skoppel Toppel drinking Slivovitz and waiting for a water break out. This, if you're a sherry whiskey head, this is just fantastic. It's got that spiciness. It's got the dried fruits, the dates.
The color from here, David, looks on point as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you look at these things and in the bottles, and they're really, really dark.
If you line up all the colors from today all next to each other, it's just an amazing array, from yellow to almost ruby red to an orange.
But of course, it's all caramel.
Well, he won't be happy.
Even though it doesn't need it, I'm going to add a few drops of water.
Sacrilege.
This brings out more spiciness. Actually, quite a lot of spiciness with the water. And chocolate as well. One of those that the finish just keeps on going. Who's ever had a peated GlenAllachie? Anybody?
If they've done one on the whiskey list, I guarantee I've bought one.
I can't even think if they've done one, a peated one at all.
I can't remember one, but
There's a I've got an Excl cask, quite a young one as well, that haven't opened yet, but certainly haven't seen a peated GlenAllachie. Would be interesting.
There we go. Just reading Google. GlenAllachie Distillery debuts peated whiskey brand 26th of September 2023.
As
You
in,
heard-
like
you heard it
in
first
2 months'
here.
time.
It's going to be called Mikkel Tor, pronounced Mikkel Tor. I've got another brand for it.
Oh, yes, I have heard of that. I just didn't make the connection with
Yeah.
distillery. Yeah. It will have to have a competition as to who can pronounce that correctly.
Yeah, they give it to you. Mikkel Tor. Give you this pronunciation.
There seems to be a trend to have peated brands different to the standard brand. Aaron have done that with the it was the Macrimur, now the Lag. It's a completely different distillery now. The Martin do it with the Kubokken. I suppose that makes sense. It just keeps the original brand pure.
Tobermory Lecheg.
Yep. Obviously, yes, there's that too. So even though it's a PX, I don't find it as sweet as some of the typical PXs. Right, and now hopefully you've still got some of that left, because it'll be interesting to compare that one with the next one, which is the 2008, the PX Puncheon. UK exclusive. This was one of mine. 56.9%. It's a 12-year-old, 687 bottles. And a lot sweeter and more syrupy on the nose, that's for sure.
I can see the viscosity in Howard's glass right now.
Yep. Certainly sticky.
Oh man.
Now the one tasting that I've been promising to do or threatening to do for a long time, and we've got to do it, is to have whiskies matured or finished in different types of sherry casks, paired with the sherries that they were matured in. So have a PX, have an Oloroso sherry, have a Fino, have a Amontillado, a Moscatel, a Manzanilla. That's something that people would be interested in. There are a lot of people who love sherry matured whiskies who haven't tried a lot of those sherries themselves.
As long as it's not like cask port or something like that.
No, I have a supplier of really good, proper sherries. They've got to come from Jerez.
Went to Jerez a few months ago, and I sat down for a few days just tasting ports, so I could understand what the barrel should taste makes on it.
Yeah, and that's you get these guys that do make those pilgrimages. That must have been a fantastic experience.
Unbelievable.
As long as you then had the opportunity to run with the bulls as well.
No, that's in Palermo later, other side of the country.
Without digressing too much, Rod from Amber Lane Distillery, he did that trip. He went to Cognac in France, Jerez in Spain, to learn how they make the different spirits, the barrels, everything, because he doesn't want to just buy a barrel from a broker and put whiskey in it and mature it. He wants to understand the maturation process and the flavors, and that I think has worked massively in his favor. Like we love his whiskeys, but yeah, that's a bit of a side fact. Sounds like the journey to Jerez makes a lot of sense.
Him and I traded notes.
Ian and Karen, welcome. Good to see you. We're just about to kick off whiskey number 4, so you got a bit of catching up to do. There you go.
Excellent.
There is a wonderful Grant Burge PX cask fortified wine you can get in Australia. It is phenomenal. Normally only at the cellar door, I think, these days, but in the Barossa, but it's brilliant for those that like sherry cask. You'll like that.
I prefer this to the previous one.
Me too. It's a lot more balanced.
Yeah.
Is the word I can use. There's nothing jars. It's just so
Yeah.
easy at that 56, nearly 57%. So easy to drink, dangerously easy to drink. It's got that rich oiliness, that Christmas cakiness.
Smoother. It's just, yeah.
A bit of old leather as well. Why did I give this one up?
Well, David, I
this
think
is-
you appreciate the ability, because you've got so much behind you there. This forces you to actually try some of your goods.
Well, exactly. Now, there's not emotionally bonded to any of them. If there's a worthy cause, and in any virtual tasting or any tasting of any description that Whisky List does, kind of falls into that category, then we'll open them and drink them. Well, I'm glad this one got open sooner rather than later. Now, I don't know if this is a full maturation or a finish, but 12 years in a PX cask does sound like a long time, but probably not in Scotland, where it matures slowly, especially with a Puncheon. So we've got, that's probably close to 600 liter size, and with 687 bottles, that's probably about right. So it probably is. Now, Billy's been in the industry for 50 years now. He started as a toddler, sweeping the floors at Tobermory Distillery. And because of his standing in the industry, and Glendronach, even in his day, was the biggest purchaser of sherry casks of any Scottish distillery. He's got access to these fantastic casks from Jerez and from the bodegas in Spain. And you may have noticed, even Macallan now, on some of their releases, they refer to sherry seasoned oak, not sherry matured, not sherry casks.
Oh.
And the difference is that because of the scarcity now, and it's up to us to drink more sherry, so we've got more sherry casks, that there isn't enough of the good quality old casks that have had sherry in them for decades floating around. So what they do is they get usually an American oak cask. They lend them to the bodega. They put sherry in, could be even just for a few months. Tip it out, either reuse it to put into another cask or sell it as cooking sherry or vinegar. And then they put the whiskey into it. So there's a very superficial layer of that sherry. So that's why they call it sherry seasoned oak, not a sherry cask. And it's completely different. The color is different. The quality is different. It just isn't the same. And when Macallan start doing that, you know that there really is a shortage. And so if you see a sherry matured whiskey that looks probably too light to be really a sherry cask, that's what's happened. They've put it into a sherry seasoned oak rather than just a really old sherry cask. But this one, again, you look at the color of that, just even in the glass, it's almost purple in the bottle when before it's opened. Right, I think it's if you do have water handy, now's the time to almost get that PX viscosity out of your palate, because now we on to, as we say, now for something completely different. Right, number 5 is the rum cask. So it's a distillery exclusive, 63.7%.
Oh my God.
2014 maturation. There's one where we do have some for sale. And you can't get past that rum cask, that pineapple, overripe banana character. Now, I was trying to find out whether it's a rum cask finish or any information other than a listing on Whisky Base. I could find nothing. So here's the challenge. I know Howard's already onto it. I'm trying to find Who's a fan in general of rum cask or rum finished whiskies? Anybody find that that's their sweet spot? So what do you know? This is a rum from Panama, so it is a Caribbean rum. Ooh, on the palate, it's just 100% pineapple. This would go well in a cocktail, you know, with a little umbrella and everything. Again, I'm not getting that 63%.
No way.
Now I know when Benriach did a rum cask, and talking to Billy and to Stuart Buchanan, they got access to some rum casks, and they were pretty dried out. They thought they'd use them anyway, and they put the whiskey into it as a finish, and after a few months they tasted it, and there was no difference, no change at all. And they kept tasting it, and they thought, well, these casks are just a dud. They're just too dried out, too useless. And after close to 2 years, all of a sudden, that burst of that rum character, that pineapple and banana came through. They said it took that long for the cask to kind of open up and release its character. And I suspect that that's quite common with the rum distilleries. They just kind of literally just throw them onto the beach and leave them there once they're finished with them. They're going cheap. Whiskey distilleries recover them, but they do need some nursing and nurturing until they can really release what they have to offer. Looking for a bit of water.
Yeah, it's an 8-year-old in a single cask of rum from the whole time.
Yep, that's it.
In a Panama rum.
Yep.
That's what the bottle is. Nothing else.
Oh, I like it.
Single barrel, 298 bottles. That's it.
So this was a distillery exclusive. We do have a few of them that we've managed to kind of squirrel away in the dead of night. Somebody's suitcase.
So anyone who's been to Scotland knows that not a lot of the distillery tours are the same. They take you to show you the same process, the same washbacks, the same copper stills, the same, you know. But then they do vary when it comes to at the end, depending on your tasting experience, hand fill bottlings, that sort of stuff. So GlenAllachie does do the hand fills. They do the distillery exclusives. They've got a bit of a bar there as well with all these whiskies available at basically cost price. So I think this was going for £6 for a 30ml pour or something like that at the distillery. So out of the many Scottish distilleries out there and the tours, GlenAllachie is always, you know, decent value. Not the most value, but up there in terms of I think range and capability and scope of what you can taste. And if you're lucky on the day, and depending who you can sweet talk, they'll take you around the bond stores as well, which is pretty cool.
That's the advantage of some of these smaller boutique distilleries, where the tours aren't, they're good, but they're not that slick, but they're a lot more genuine than just the commercial where you've got somebody on work experience that's hired for the day just to show you around. The people that do the tours are the guys that actually work there. They're on the floor. They're passionate about what they do. And as Ollie says, you do get access to some of the more interesting whiskies, either in the shop or just in their bars. I've been successively adding a bit more water at a time. And it's I wouldn't be my favorite in the lineup so far, but certainly not terrible. If you like rum cask whiskies, that's one. And there's looking at quite a few of the rum cask whiskies, they do tend to be at quite high ABVs.
You know, rum cask whiskies are great for rum.
Who's had the Archie Rose, the rum cask Archie Rose? Again, just digressing. I've got their high test molasses rum that they then use those casks for the whiskey. That's the rum itself is at 72% ABV. Kind of makes your eyes bleed. Has the added advantage to cleans your teeth, just takes all the enamel off. The rum itself is fantastic, and I actually prefer to the to the brand to the whiskey that's been matured in those casks.
Archie Rose should stick to everything but whiskey.
Well, just a heads up, you in the next few days you might be getting some information about a new event that we will be rolling out in November. So if you are a rum fan or other dark spirits or sipping spirits other than whiskey, just keep an eye on your emails. Something that we're quite excited about. We've been working on for quite a while.
Tell them, David. We're about to launch it anyways. Tell them.
Yeah, okay. It's called the Sipping Spirits Show. It's on the 18th of November, Saturday, like all our shows, 2 3-hour sessions, and you get to try. We will have well over 20 different brands of rums, tequilas, mezcal, agave, brandy, cognacs, armagnacs, a few other weird and wonderfuls. So we're talking about sipping spirits, nothing with weird fruit juices in, nothing with little umbrellas in. So that's when you see a lot of independent bottlers and whiskey makers like Billy Walker, he does a rum range called McNair's. When they start delving into rums and even tequilas, mezcals, you know that there's something in it, that it's the next big thing. Rums and tequilas, mezcals are where whiskey was about 15, 20 years ago in terms of maturity and balance between the commercial mixer stuff and the boutique handcrafted stuff. So that's 18th of November. You can put that in your diaries, but you'll be getting some emails about it soon.
So it's obviously it's a bit of a proof of concept for this year, David. It's Sydney based for those in Melbourne and abroad. But if it's a successful sort of format and whiskey drinkers, we kind of cross promote into other categories of dark spirits, great. We'll take this show on the road across the country in future years. But yeah, kind of a proof of concept to see if people actually enjoy the other dark spirits essentially, and your tequilas and mezcals. So keen to see how it goes.
Pretty much anything other than whiskey, gin, and vodka qualifies. Right, heading into the final straight with the last one, and apologize for any mispronunciation for the Italians in the audience. This is a Valpolicella handful distillery exclusive, 64.1%. So the Valpolicella is it's a sweet red wine made from the dried grapes, similar in process to Amarone. So if you're familiar with the Arran distillery, have done an Amarone cask. Who else did Amarone? In fact, Glen Murray. Ian Allen was telling me that he got the inspiration from the Arran. So it's not a commonly used one, another one of those weird and wonderfuls. Don't know how many whiskey producers actually use this type of cask. So again, 64%. So even though it's a distillery handful, we do have literally a handful of them to sell. Because again, they were smuggled out in the dead of night, back of a donkey. It's got a really interesting finish.
It just keeps going.
This one I do get quite an intense alcohol burn on the nose initially. That's 64%. Got quite a dry finish, a lot of tannins in there.
Howard, you're not loving that, are you? I can see the arms crossed.
A dash of water does soften it, but it's got that,
This is
what's
not
that, like that dry, almost if you've had 90% dark chocolate. It's that kind of dryness. It kind of sucks all the moisture out of your tongue. Just a cocoa hit to it.
This is for cleaning windows with.
I think it's one of those that needs to open up a bit. It's not, I don't dislike it at all, actually. It's growing on me. Maybe I'm just getting drunker.
I think there's less viscosity in this one than the traditional sherry ones. So those PX ones are quite heavy spirit, whereas this is more a lighter spirit on the palate.
Yeah, yeah.
Which gives that drying effect on the palate and on the finish there. It's not as chewy as you would suggest. So
yeah, I think that probably got to find the sweet spot with a bit of water, is that it doesn't have the balance of certainly any of the PXs.
I think that's the risk with hand fill. Sorry, David, to interject, is they just put it up a barrel, and you know, you go to town with it. You get your bottle, you fill it, you walk away with your hand fills, and that's how it is, straight out of the cask. Hasn't been assessed by a master blender or cut down with water to its optimal thing. That's up to you as a consumer to make that choice.
What we are getting is with all of these is the DNA of the distillery.
Mm.
And the one thing that that Billy has kind of prides himself on with all the distilleries that he's worked with, and you can see the range certainly with more so with Benriach and Glenglassaugh than with Glendronach, which he really didn't do much to change the way Glendronach were making their whiskies. But the other two, if you look at the range of styles from ex-bourbons and sherry and a bit of peat as well with those two distilleries, he tries to get a very versatile spirit that can work with different types of wood, different types of maturation, almost like a kind of a chameleon. It can morph itself into whatever you need to. and you can see that coming through in GlenAllachie as well. Interesting to see now they've got let's say the peated range. What else is going to come out with? But I certainly I was a bit ho-hum when I first tried the core range when it was first released again in Australia under Billy's tutelage, and then I started trying some of the single casks, the distillery releases, the exclusives, and that changed my opinion of the distillery and what Billy was doing with it. And that's certainly I agree with the guys that say it's got to keep an eye on it as the next hero of sherry matured whiskies, with Bunnahabhain and then GlenAllachie. Glenorica will always be there. Macallan's now a brand rather than a whiskey. The brand's bigger than the product. So we've got certainly a lot more to look forward to.
I'm keeping myself busy, John, with other whiskies next to me. I'm just poured myself a spring bank that is 67.8% straight out of the cask, basically. So, David, shall we launch the poll?
Yes, I've just put in there the link to to where you can buy a few of those. Billy's the password to get your discount. We've got the Marsala, the rum, and the Valpolicella all available for sale. Okay. Right. Everybody finish voting?
Interesting comment from Chris Ferry.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you want to expand on that? Why it's not up to the standards?
Is it the ages? Still too young?
And are you comparing a Billy Walker Glendronach single cask to a GlenAllachie single cask, or the Rachel Barry sort of region? Yeah.
I just poured myself a GlenDronach, and it's just everything is, I guess, bigger, bolder, just way more sultanas on the nose, fruits, and yeah, just the taste, yeah. I don't know if they're going for that sort of cherry bomb style, but I just felt like I was expecting more.
It's a question only the distillery can answer, but I think they are trying to go for that cherry bomb style. But only time will tell. They've only been going since 2017, kind of molding it to their own image. So it's we'll keep an eye on them and over the next few years. Okay, I think we can end the poll. Look at the results. The PX Puncheon way ahead, and yeah, interesting with the rum cask.
No one liked the Hungarian virgin oak.
Oh no, I couldn't make a dare joke, but I won't.
It's hard being the first whiskey at any tasting.
Well, thank you, everybody. Any last observations, comments? As always, we appreciate your feedback. Any suggestions of tastings, events, styles, stories that you'd like? guest appearances, please send them through to us. We're always
Oh,
looking for
great.
new ideas. And
Thanks very much. If you get Billy Walker next time, it would be great.
He was busy.
Or a
we've
Whisky
been
List
trying for
exclusive.
12 years to get him here. We're not giving up, but yeah.
Well, he doesn't have to physically come. He could just zoom in.
Yeah. Look, we were told also we would never get Rachel Berry to Australia. It's just unheard of. She doesn't travel. And see what happens. So, yep, we never say never. Well, thanks, everyone.
I was just going to say, while we're wrapping up, so we've been selling quite a few different virtual tastings. We basically have a lineup of maybe one a week between now and Christmas. Suddenly all out of the woodwork. Various brands are coming out and like, oh, we want to do a virtual tasting before Christmas. Can we slot you in? So I think we sold the North Star ones yesterday. A few others, yeah, going pretty quickly. Overeem ones, we 130. When we break down a bottle divided by 700 mils by 20, you get 35 bottles samples out of a bottle. That went very quickly, and then got on the phone to Jane. And I said, "You need to send more stock up very quickly." And she said, "How much?" And I'm like, 2 or 3 extra bottles. So yeah, over 100 kits of the Overeem went in 48 hours. Very popular tasting. Chris has just put up the Thompson Brothers one to reward members, but it's on the site as well. So that's coming the 1st of November if it's a Wednesday night. And then, yeah, we've got plenty more interesting ones, a mix of Aussies, some Scotches, a couple other world whiskies. There should be a sponge tasting between now and the end of the year as well. So, yeah, as long as you guys are still interested in virtual tastings, we'll keep cracking these bottles open and raiding David's shelf behind him. And, it was, February? We did a top shelf tasting where half the hard bags were yours. I think we're due to pillage the rest of them behind you.
Well, yeah, that's as you say, that's the way I get to taste them as well. So all good.
But yeah, thank you all. Good to see you all, and we'll see you at the next tasting.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Guys.
Appreciate it, guys.
See you all.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thank you.